Indian situation where we are located in a tropical country, the biodegradable waste will undergo decomposition very fast. So, we can't permit it to be stored for more than a day. So, the waste needs to be collected as quickly as possible. And there are several aspects to be considered when we are planning the waste storage, which is an essential requirement pertaining to different elements of the waste management. The different aspects to be considered when you are choosing a container for waste storage is listed here. The first issue is type of the waste, which depends upon how we are planning to segregate. For example, if you have only the biodegradable waste and the non-biodegradable waste separately, you need to have two containers, and the biodegradable waste necessarily should be stored in a container which is closed to prevent access to the flies, the vectors and other things. The recyclable waste like paper, plastics, etc., it is not necessary that it should be in a container with lid, but the biodegradable waste should be in a container with lid. Next is the size of the container. The size of the container, now for a household level, if you are planning, we already know the waste generation rate, of which how much is biodegradable waste. For example, Indian situation, about half a kg of waste is generated by an Indian citizen every day, of which about 50% we can take it to be biodegradable, and depending upon the number of people and the duration of the storage, we will be able to decide what should be the volume of the container that is required. Roughly about 7 to 10 liters capacity containers, if you have, that will be adequate to store our waste. And the time limit for the storage. For the biodegradable waste, as already I have told you, it should be collected every day because the waste undergoes very fast decomposition. For the recyclable waste, it is not necessary that it needs to be collected every day, it could be collected every week, and so the local community can decide the kind of storage and the collection requirements, and then that needs to be communicated properly, the collection system, the storage system. And if mechanical collection is envisaged, then special containers needs to be used. The amount and the density of the waste based on the waste characteristics and the frequency of collection. It is found that the frequency of collection also has got some link with the waste generation rate, and typical Indian situations, daily collection is what is advised, though in many developed countries, especially western countries where they have very cold climate, they may resort to even weekly collection. So, the local regulations and the local conditions also needs to be taken into consideration while planning the storage and the collection which needs to be collected. But the point that needs to be kept in mind is that the waste needs to be stored at the point of generation, and the waste needs to be collected from the place of storage, and there shall not be no littering in between. And especially when we consider multi-story buildings, since this course is focusing also on the multi-story or the high-rise buildings, some important aspect that is to be considered is how do we handle the waste that is generated in very high-rise buildings. And one practice that is commonly done is use a chute at each floor level and permit the waste generators to dump the waste through a chute. And of late people are not advising such a thing, because when we have high rise buildings and you throw the waste through a chute, that many times it causes noise problem, and also the bags gets teared and it causes unhygienic conditions, and there is also possibility of fire hazard. So, what is recommended is that now what is advised is that each floor level you may have common storage containers, and the inhabitants could be advised to take their waste to such containers, and maybe there could be a separate access to take such containers to the basement where further sorting and processing could takes place. Now, having stored the waste and collected the waste, of course parallelly we need to think about processing of the waste. Broadly there are two routes that is possible for processing of the waste. One is the biological route and another is the thermal route. In both there are different technological options available, and primarily it depends upon whether you are doing the processing with the presence of oxygen or in the absence of oxygen. For example, if you take the biological route, we have composting as the most prominent option, which is an aerobic process where in the presence of oxygen we degrade the waste using naturally occurring aerobic microorganisms by supplementing the required level of oxygen and water, and finally produce the humus like product which is called compost, and which could be used as a soil conditioner. Another option that is available is the anaerobic digestion, where in the absence of oxygen, again using the naturally available microorganisms and by controlling the necessary conditions, we produce especially biogas, and the residue can be further composted, and that option. The third option is maybe we can carry out the anaerobic decomposition process in a landfill itself, that is called the bioreactor landfill. But as per our Indian legislations, the bioreactor landfill is not permitted, so we need to either opt for composting or anaerobic digestion, about which further details we see in the subsequent slides. Now, in the thermal route, again there are three options: incineration, gasification and pyrolysis. Incineration happens in the presence of excess oxygen, whereas pyrolysis happens in the absence of oxygen. Gasification is somewhat in between. So, at a commercial level, incineration is the most common practice in the thermal route, but for which the waste composition, the waste characteristics has to be carefully looked into. So, for Indian situation, the technology, appropriate technologies, if you look at, composting comes as the best option because it can handle different kinds of waste. Even if it is mixed form, composting will takes place. Only thing is the quality of the product will get affected. Biomethanation can be considered only if you have highly homogeneous, organic and easily biodegradable waste. For example, if you have the kitchen waste or the hotel waste or a mess waste or a garden or a vegetable market waste or a slaughterhouse waste, that kind of a highly homogeneous and easily biodegradable waste, we can think of biomethanation. And if we have incinerable waste, for example, any organic waste is incinerable, but it also depends upon what was the moisture content. If it is moisture content is very high, then lot of energy is to be spent on drying the waste, then incineration will not be viable. So, but there will be certain portion of the waste which could be incinerable. So, when we consider for a large city, even incineration also could be an option, but for small towns it will be a combination of composting and biomethanation as the appropriate technology in Indian context. Being the most appropriate technology and which has been in practice for many years, we will look at the composting process. Since it is a biological process, it is applicable only for the biodegradable waste, means the segregated garbage ideally that needs to be brought, and there are different ways by which it could be composted, but mostly in our situations what is recommended is the windrow composting, where we heap the waste in the form of windrows and then turn the waste, and this happens over a period of time. During the course of time, naturally itself the waste decomposition takes place, but there are several essential conditions that needs to be maintained. Primarily it is the moisture, the oxygen, the water content, and also to enhance this process in a faster way, we also prepare the waste in terms of reducing the size of the waste, adjusting the carbon to nitrogen ratio of the waste, and also initially maybe enhancing the process by seeding the waste with selected microorganisms. So, the turning and heaping process is called the windrowing process, which roughly takes about a month. During the course of time, you may turn the waste about 6 or 7 times, and this facilitates aeration, as well as during the course of time you can sprinkle water, so adjust moisture. But it is also important that we should allow the heap to remain in such a way that the heat that is released during the composting process is retained and the heat rises within the heap. That is an important factor. The heat or the temperature should rise to about 60 to 70 degree, and this happens naturally if we are not disturbing the heap, and that is important for killing the pathogens that is there in the waste, means the disease causing organisms, if it all there in the waste, that will be get killed. It will also destroy the seeds. Most of our kitchen waste will contain the seeds of the fruits and vegetables that we consume, and that needs to be destroyed. Otherwise, a farmer who is using the compost will get into the problems of these seeds or weeds. So, over a period of 1 month you do this turning and the waste gets decomposed, then you do the sieving to separate the decomposed waste. Then slow decomposition can be permitted for another 3 months, which is called the curing. After the curing, we get the compost which could be packed and then marketed. And the residues that comes during the screening process, which could be the non-biodegradable components, if it is there, then if there are recyclable components in that, that could be recycled, and non-recyclable components or inerts that needs to be landfilled. This is what typically happens in a composting process, and we can also use earthworms to support some of these activities as a manager, and if you are using that, then we call such composting as vermicomposting, where the earthworms helps by grinding the waste. So, it helps in size reduction when it eats and then grinds and then excretes. Mechanical grinding process happens, so size reduction happens. Similarly, when the earthworms passes through the heap, it helps in aeration. So, and thirdly, when the earthworms excretes, it will also be excreting lot of microorganisms which are there in its guts, so which acts as a seeding. So, to some extent the earthworms could help some of the requirements for the composting, and it can enhance the process. So, vermicomposting using the earthworms, but it is important that the earthworms cannot survive in high temperature. So, if we are using vermicomposting, either it has to be done in thin layers so that the temperature build-up is not happening, or it should be done for pre-digested waste, means first few days, first 2 weeks you do the conventional composting and later make the earthworms as the manager, so that you can minimize the turning requirements. And it is about 0.2 square meters of space is adequate to set up an earthworm or vermicompost pit for a family of 5, and for large plants we require about 2.5 to 3 hectares of land for a plant capacity of about 100 tons per day. And it is also advisable that we can have vermicomposting systems developed for apartments or high rise buildings, and one simplest thing is we can develop in tanks which are connected, or a tank or a brick tank as seen here, divided into 4 parts, so that in one part when the feeding is taking place, in another part the composting will be taking place, in another part the curing will be taking place, and tank is divided by compartments with openings. The earthworms will be slowly moving, so we need not change the earthworms. Otherwise, we also need to separate the earthworms when we are doing in the heaps, and during the course of time there is a possibility that the earthworms may also get killed. So, this is one typical model that is recommended for apartments levels. But it is most important that the compost that we produce should meet certain quality requirements, especially first it should be mature, means there shall not be any issues that we discussed at the beginning pertaining to the biodegradable waste, like the odor or fly nuisance and the rat nuisance. That should not happen. So, which means it should stabilize. And second thing is it should be free of heavy metals. Now, if you are mixing household hazardous waste with the waste and then do the composting, especially batteries and the kind of substances are there in the waste, and then if you do the composting, the organic matter get decomposed, but the hazardous substances will leach out into the battery, and that will contaminate. So there are standards prescribed for different heavy metals. Ideally you have to see that such substances are not included in the waste. Then of course the nutrients which will be of interest to the farmer, though the waste as such is not having adequate nutrients when it is composted, it is possible that we can supplement it once the composting is over, and we can provide the farmer with manure which could be a good soil conditioner and also having the adequate nutrients. Then the hygienization is making the waste free from the pathogens and the seeds, which is automatically done if you are able to maintain the temperature at 60 to 70 degree, which naturally happens for at least one day. So these are controlled by the input control, especially the source segregation. So it is very much important. The composting time, which ensures the maturity, the temperature ensures the hygienization and the killing of the weeds. Now let us look at the second option, that is the biomethanation of waste, which I have told you is applicable for highly homogeneous and biodegradable waste. Again, the all waste we can't degrade, we need to separate the non biodegradable waste. The mostly biodegradable waste needs to be shredded, means it needs to be crushed or size needs to be reduced. Then it has to be converted in the form of a slurry by mixing it with water. Ideally we should have about 10% solids concentration, means 90% water and 10% solids. To that extent we have to make it in the form of a slurry, and then you keep it in a tank along with the required microorganisms. So initially normally cow dung is used as a mixture to supplement the microorganisms, and once the process starts, the microorganisms will remain in the system and the process continues, and in about 30 days time the biodegradable waste gets converted into biogas, during which there will be a 4-stage process that happens. Initially the complex waste, which will be mainly carbohydrates, proteins and lipids, that will be converted into simple organic molecules by hydrolysis. Then that is converted into organic acids, and further that is converted into methane by a group of organisms. So which means that compared to composting we need little more better control in terms of absence of oxygen, because such organisms don't operate in the presence of oxygen. So it has to be completely anaerobic conditions. There has to be a proper mixing, and if you can maintain a high temperature of about 60 degree, then the process will be happening in a faster manner. In practice the content of the container will be heated, and we may use wherever solar energy is available, that could be tapped to heat the content, so that the waste processing happens faster and the size of the digest could be reduced. And at the end what we get as the biogas is about 60 to 70% methane, which is a fuel which could be used for cooking or any other energy requirement purpose. For large cities the fuel can also be used to generate electricity, and that could be supplied to the grid. And after 1 month the digested slurry comes out, that could be dewatered using a centrifuge, and the dewatered slurry could be again composted. So we get both biogas as well as compost. But the most important thing is the feed quality has to be very good. There are experiences where large biomethanation plants were set up for mixed waste, and the plant has failed because of the large inert content. So it is to be kept in mind that if you are considering biomethanation as an option, then the waste has to be highly segregated, homogeneous, and is also highly biodegradable in nature. This is one such plant for biodegradable waste biomethanation in Chennai, which processes about 30 tons of waste from one of the vegetable markets, which generates about 100 tons of waste, and the energy is converted into electricity and is supplied to the power grid. Now the third option that is available for waste management is the thermal route, that is incineration. Ideally the incinerable components which are having high calorific value in the form of paper, wood or plastics and that kind of substances needs to be separated, dried and they can also be converted into fuel pellets by compacting it, or even without compacting they can be used as fluff and mixed with any other organic materials if the quantity is not adequate, and then burn that in a boiler and then use the energy again for electricity requirements. So, this also is practiced, but it is not very common in Indian context because of the poor quantity of the incinerable fraction of the waste, and also the high moisture content of our waste, high inert content of the waste, low calorific value of the waste. So, these are some constraints in using this technology for our waste, but for large cities where even 20% of the waste will be adequate to set up an incinerator, such facility also could be considered as part of an integrated waste management system. Now, if we can't process the waste, or even if we carry out processing of the waste, there will be residues that needs to go to a sanitary landfill. So, this is a typical cross section of a landfill. So, now we will focus on the last element of waste management, which is the disposal of the residues, and as per our Indian legislations we are supposed to dispose only the inerts or the residues that comes from the waste processing, which has to be done in a landfill, which is an engineered structure for long term storage. And the long term storage means normally landfills are planned for about 20 to 25 years of life. So, we should quantify the extent of waste that will come during that period, then identify a place depending upon the density in a landfill. We can compact the waste to about 800 kg per cubic meter. So, accordingly we reduce the volume of the waste and then we require accordingly less space, but since the storage is for long period, we will be requiring an extensive period. For example, a city like Chennai may require about 100 to 200 hectares of land depending upon the depth at which you are planning the filling, and the site has to be suitable for this activity. So, there are several constraints which we need to eliminate and then identify a site, take into consideration of the climatic, geological and other access related and waste management related criteria, and we need to provide 7 essential components to be in place, starting with at the bottom we should have a liner system which will provided at the bottom as well as the side, of course to ensure that the leachate is not getting out, similarly groundwater is not getting in, and basically the waste is remained in a dry form. As part of the liner system, there will be a leachate collection system which collects the leachate that is formed and which has to be treated. So, the liner system, the leachate collection treatment system, then the waste is placed in layers and compacted during the operation of the waste, and during, if we have some biodegradable fraction of the waste, there is a possibility that biogas will be generated. So, there has to be a gas collection system and treatment system, which is the third component, and finally the waste needs to be covered with a final cover system, and it is also recommended that we use daily covers and intermediate covers depending upon the type of the waste that is filled. If it is purely inert waste, then there is no need for a daily cover. If it is a mixed waste, there has to be a daily cover and intermediate cover. So, over a period of time we build it like a hill and finally cover it to ensure that the water or the rainwater is not percolating and leachate generation is minimized. In addition to these components, there also needs to be environmental monitoring system where we need to have monitoring wells both on the upstream and the downstream side, and also other environmental monitoring for the air quality. In addition, there should also be a surface drainage system, surface water drainage system, because it is a large area and if a rainfall occurs, the water needs to be properly drained, otherwise it will lead to floods or other kind of situation. Similarly, water from the other areas also should not flow into this area. So, the surface water drainage system is also another essential component. So, if you make an engineered structure taking into account of all these components, looking like this, like a hill of waste which is constructed over a period of time, then that is what is expected as the final destination for the waste or for the ultimate disposal of the waste. Of course, A landfill is a permanent headache because it's a long time storage, and there are two issues. One is the leachate that will be generated. Even if we have provided the liner system with specifications, and even if we are putting a cover system which minimize the entry of the water, the waste itself will undergo decomposition, and there is possibility of generation of the leachate, which is a highly concentrated wastewater which needs to be managed. And if there are biodegradable waste, then the landfill gas also will be generated, that also needs to be managed. And normally it is expected that this process will go on for another 30-40 years. So which means that a landfill during its construction operation, it will take one generation, about 30 years, and then its operation or monitoring will go on for another 30 years. So that is why we talked about the waste management hierarchy, where the landfill is preferred as the least preferred option. Now, to summarize what we were discussing, we were focusing on the municipal solid waste management, and we have seen that there is a need to integrate different aspects and involving different stakeholders related to different waste system elements, starting from generation, where we need to look at avoiding the generation of the waste, then collection, transfer, transport, treatment and disposal. These are the waste management elements, and to all these elements we should apply the hierarchy of reducing, reusing, recycling and recovery as the hierarchical options. Take into account the technical issues, environmental issues, economic issues, social issues, because ultimately many of the waste management element, especially the waste generation and waste collection, there is lot of involvement of the public which is essential to make the process success. And there are different stakeholders, the waste generators, the municipalities who are having the responsibility of managing or providing the facilities, the government which has to ensure that such facilities and the systems are being financed and then provided, and also the public and the private sector players who can set up such facilities. All these players, once they play their role, then the waste management will become a success. And basically there are these four elements, that is our interest to improve the situation in terms of the political will, the management commitment, the commitment of the managers, and when it comes to municipal solid waste, it is the municipal authorities, the technical capabilities in terms of processing, the composting plant or the biomethanation plant or the RDF plant, and of course the financial resources combined with the competence of the people who are operating, the attitude of the different stakeholders, especially the public, the skills and the habits are essential to make waste management a success. And for a manager, for a planner, city planner or a building planner, it is essential that they take into account waste management as an activity which should take place throughout the operation of such a city or a facility, and provide for the waste storage and waste processing facilities, which is one main constraint, and also ensuring that minimum buffer zones are maintained. First of all, it has to be planned, and then such buffer zones needs to be planned, and the occupiers also needs to play several roles, especially as public. Primarily they should practice source reduction, source segregation and source level recycling. They should stop littering of public places and the streets. They should pay for waste management. Waste management, especially waste collection, waste processing, it requires money, and that has to be paid by the waste generators. And there is also need that the waste generators cooperate with the municipal authorities to identify places and demand for waste processing in an environmental friendly manner. And with that we complete our session on municipal solid waste management. Thank you very much.